A quiet truth catches many people off guard. The kindest person in the room is often the one carrying the heaviest emotional weight. While others are focused on being understood, an empath is usually focused on understanding everyone else. They listen when nobody wants to listen. They stay when others walk away. They forgive mistakes that would make most people leave. Because of this, many people begin to see their kindness as a permanent resource. They assume the empath will always be there, always be patient, and always find a reason to give one more chance. That assumption becomes the beginning of a mistake that can take years to understand. Most people believe the greatest danger comes from anger, conflict, or revenge. Yet the real turning point often arrives in complete silence. An empath rarely explodes. They rarely seek payback. They rarely announce that they have reached their limit. Instead, they slowly absorb disappointment after disappointment until a line is finally crossed. And when that moment arrives, the change can be so unexpected that the people around them do not recognize it until it is far too late. What makes this even more fascinating is that many studies on emotional intelligence and human behavior suggest that highly empathetic people are often better at understanding others than others are at understanding them. They notice patterns. They notice intentions. They notice emotional shifts that most people completely miss. For a long time, they use this awareness to help, support, and protect the people they care about. But when that same awareness reveals that they are being taken for granted, ignored, manipulated, or repeatedly hurt, a powerful transformation begins, and once it begins, it rarely moves backward. In this video, you will discover why empaths stay in painful situations longer than most people, the hidden emotional cost of constantly caring for others, the warning signs that reveal an empath is reaching their breaking point, and the surprising reason people often regret losing an empath long after they are gone. You will also learn lesser-known truths about emotional exhaustion, boundaries, and the quiet psychological shift that happens when an empath finally chooses self-respect over self-sacrifice. The final part of this video is especially important because it reveals the transformation that changes everything, a transformation that many people never see coming until they are left facing the consequences of their own actions. What happens next is not about revenge. It is not about punishment. It is about a reality that catches people completely unprepared. The loss of genuine loyalty, patience, and understanding can create a void that no apology can easily fill. Stay with us until the end because each piece of this story connects to the next, and the final lesson may completely change the way you view empathy, relationships, and human nature itself. Welcome to the channel. If you enjoy deep insights into psychology, human behavior, and the hidden dynamics that shape our lives, make sure to subscribe and join our growing community. Now, let's begin. One of the biggest reasons people misunderstand empaths is because they judge them by what they see on the surface. They see someone who keeps giving chances. They see someone who forgives. They see someone who stays. From the outside, this can look like weakness. It can look like a lack of confidence. It can even look like an inability to let go. But the reality is often very different. Empaths do not stay because they are blind. In many cases, they stay because they see too much. They notice pain hiding behind anger. They notice fear hiding behind arrogance. They notice insecurity hiding behind rude behavior. While most people focus on actions alone, empaths often focus on the reasons behind those actions. That is why they give people opportunities that others would never give. They see potential where others see problems. They see possibilities where others see dead ends. And because they believe people can grow, they keep holding on long after most people would have walked away. This ability can be beautiful. It allows empaths to build deep connections. It allows them to support people during difficult times. It allows them to become trusted friends, partners, and family members. But it also creates a hidden danger. The more good they see in someone, the harder it becomes to accept the truth when that person repeatedly causes harm. Instead of asking whether the relationship is healthy, they ask whether the person is struggling. Instead of focusing on their own pain, they focus on the pain of the other person. Instead of protecting themselves, they try to heal what is broken. As a result, they often stay in situations that slowly drain their emotional energy. Many people leave when they feel hurt. The hurt itself becomes a signal. It tells them that something is wrong. It tells them that a boundary has been crossed. It tells them that they need to step away. Empaths often respond differently. When they are hurt, their first reaction is not always distance. Their first reaction is understanding. They start asking questions. Why did this happen? What is this person going through? Is there a reason behind this behavior? Can this situation improve? Can this relationship be saved? Those questions may sound noble, but they can also become traps. While searching for answers, the empath continues giving time, attention, patience, and emotional support. Weeks become months. Months become years. The cycle repeats itself. What makes this even more difficult is that empaths often remember the best version of a person. Even when someone disappoints them repeatedly, they continue holding on to the version they once knew. They remember the kindness. They remember the promises. They remember the moments that made them believe the relationship was worth fighting for. Because of this, they keep hoping that the good version will return. They keep believing that change is possible. Sometimes that hope is rewarded, but many times it is not. There is another reason empaths stay longer than they should. They understand pain on a very personal level. They know what it feels like to be misunderstood. They know what it feels like to be ignored. They know what it feels like to struggle silently while nobody notices. Because they know these feelings so well, they do not want others to experience them. They become the person who listens when nobody else will listen. They become the person who stays when everyone else leaves. They become the person who carries emotional burdens that do not even belong to them. At first, this seems manageable. Helping others feels meaningful. Being supportive feels rewarding. Being needed feels important. But over time, the weight begins to grow. Every problem brought to them becomes another emotional load. Every crisis becomes another responsibility. Every conflict becomes another situation they feel pressured to solve. Little by little, they start carrying more than any one person should carry. This is where the silent damage begins. Unlike physical exhaustion, emotional exhaustion is difficult to see. There are no obvious signs, there are no visible injuries. The empath continues smiling. They continue showing up. They continue helping. To everyone around them, everything appears normal. But beneath the surface, something is changing. Their energy is slowly disappearing. Their enthusiasm begins fading. Their emotional reserves become smaller and smaller. One of the most overlooked facts about empaths is that many of them rarely talk about their own struggles. They spend so much time listening that they forget how to speak about their own pain. They spend so much time supporting others that they convince themselves their own feelings can wait. When someone asks how they are doing, they often respond with a simple answer. They say they are fine. They say everything is okay. Meanwhile, an entire storm may be building inside them. Because empaths are often seen as strong, people assume they do not need support. Friends lean on them. Family members lean on them. Partners lean on them. Coworkers lean on them. Everyone becomes comfortable receiving their emotional energy. Few stop to ask how much energy remains. Few notice how much they have already given away. The empath starts feeling responsible for everyone. If someone is upset, they feel responsible. If someone is struggling, they feel responsible. If a relationship is failing, they feel responsible. Even when situations are completely outside their control, they still carry the burden. This constant sense of responsibility creates emotional fatigue that grows heavier with time. Eventually, they become tired, not physically, emotionally. And emotional exhaustion is dangerous because it develops quietly. There is no dramatic moment. There is no sudden collapse. It happens slowly, one disappointment at a time, one broken promise at a time, one ignored feeling at a time, one sacrifice at a time. The people around them often fail to notice because the empath keeps functioning. They continue working, they continue helping, they continue caring, but inside they are beginning to question everything. They are beginning to wonder why their efforts are never enough. They are beginning to wonder why they always seem to give more than they receive. Then the warning signs start appearing. Most people never recognize these signs because they expect emotional withdrawal to look dramatic. They expect arguments, they expect anger, they expect confrontation. But empaths often move in the opposite direction. They become quieter, not because they have nothing to say, because they have said the same things too many times. They have explained their feelings repeatedly. They have communicated their needs repeatedly. They have tried to fix the problems repeatedly. When nothing changes, silence starts replacing conversation. This silence is often misunderstood. Others assume everything is improving. They assume the empath has finally accepted the situation. They assume the complaints have stopped because the problem has disappeared. In reality, the opposite may be happening. The empath is watching. The empath is observing. The empath is learning. And most importantly, the empath is emotionally stepping back. Another warning sign appears when they stop explaining themselves. Earlier, they would carefully describe how they felt. They would try to create understanding. They would work hard to build communication. But now they begin saving their energy. They realize that explanations are useless when someone refuses to listen. They realize that understanding cannot be forced, so they stop repeating themselves. Then they stop chasing. This is one of the clearest signs of emotional change. The empath who once reached out first becomes distant. The empath who once worked endlessly to keep the relationship alive becomes still. They stop carrying the entire connection by themselves. They stop doing all the emotional labor. They stop trying to pull another person toward understanding. People often misread this stage. They think the pressure is gone. They think the conflict is over. They think everything is finally calm. What they fail to understand is that the empath is no longer investing the same emotional energy. The effort that once held everything together is slowly disappearing. Then comes another shift. They stop arguing. For many people, this seems like good news, but arguments often happen because someone still cares enough to fight for improvement. They still care enough to hope. They still care enough to believe things can get better. When an empath stops arguing entirely, it does not always mean peace has arrived. Sometimes it means hope is fading. Sometimes it means they no longer believe their words can change anything. Sometimes it means they are preparing themselves for a future that no longer includes the person who keeps hurting them. This stage can last weeks. It can last months. Sometimes it lasts even longer. Outwardly, everything may appear normal. Conversations continue, daily life continues, routines continue. Yet internally, a major transformation is taking place. The empath begins releasing emotional attachment. The connection becomes weaker. The expectations become smaller. The emotional dependence begins disappearing. Then the moment arrives that changes everything. There is rarely a dramatic event. Often it is a simple realization. A realization that arrives after countless disappointments. A realization that arrives after years of effort. A realization that arrives when they finally understand a painful truth. They cannot keep sacrificing themselves for people who refuse to value them. At that moment, the entire situation looks different. The excuses that once seemed reasonable lose their power. The promises that once inspired hope lose their meaning. The future they once imagined begins to fade. For the first time, they stop asking how they can save the relationship. For the first time, they ask how they can save themselves. That single shift changes everything. The emotional attachment starts disappearing. The constant hope starts disappearing. The endless second chances start disappearing. The need for approval starts disappearing. The fear of letting go starts disappearing. And as these things disappear, a new version of the empath begins to emerge. A version that understands the difference between kindness and self-sacrifice. A version that understands the difference between compassion and emotional exhaustion. A version that finally realizes that caring about others should never require abandoning themselves. This is the part that catches most people completely off guard. For years, they may have believed they understood the empath. They thought they knew how the empath would react. They assumed there would always be another conversation, another chance, another act of forgiveness waiting around the corner. They became so used to receiving patience that they stopped appreciating it. They became so used to receiving understanding that they stopped noticing it. They became so used to the empath's presence that it started feeling permanent. But permanence is often an illusion. Every person has a limit, and when an empath reaches theirs, the outcome is rarely what people expect. Many people expect anger. They expect revenge. They expect emotional outbursts. They expect dramatic confrontations. Yet most empaths do something very different. They become calm. Not because they are unaffected. Not because they do not care. But because they have already spent so much time processing the pain long before anyone else realized there was a problem. While other people were assuming everything would continue as usual, the empath was quietly going through disappointment after disappointment. They were slowly accepting truths they did not want to accept. They were slowly releasing expectations they once held close. By the time they reach their final decision, much of the emotional battle has already happened inside them. This is why their departure often feels sudden to everyone else. To outsiders, it appears as though the empath changed overnight. In reality, the change may have been developing for months or even years. The empath does not seek revenge. They do not spend their days planning ways to hurt people. They do not try to create suffering. They do not launch attacks. They do not spread negativity. Instead, they simply stop investing energy where it is no longer valued. Their attention disappears. Their support disappears. Their emotional availability disappears. Their constant willingness to help disappears. The phone calls become less frequent. The long conversations become shorter. The endless understanding begins to fade. The emotional safety that others relied upon is no longer freely available. And that is when the absence becomes noticeable. One of the most overlooked truths about human relationships is that people often recognize value only after it is gone. While something is consistently available, it becomes part of the background. People stop paying attention to it. They stop appreciating it. They assume it will always be there. The empath's kindness often falls into this category. For years, someone may have received encouragement whenever they felt discouraged. They may have received support whenever life became difficult. They may have received understanding whenever they made mistakes. They may have received patience during moments when they did not deserve it. Because these things were always available, they seemed ordinary. But once they disappear, their true value becomes impossible to ignore. Suddenly, there is nobody checking in, nobody listening for hours without judgment, nobody trying to understand both sides of every conflict, nobody offering comfort without expecting something in return. The gap becomes real, and for many people, this realization arrives much later than they expect. At first, some people feel relieved. They think the empath was too sensitive, too emotional, too demanding, too involved. Without the empath's presence, they expect life to become easier. For a short time, they may even enjoy the extra space. But then reality starts revealing things they never noticed before. The support they depended on is gone. The loyalty they counted on is gone. The patience they relied upon is gone. The person who always made room for their mistakes is gone. And replacing those qualities is much harder than they imagined. Many people can offer attention. Many people can offer entertainment. Many people can offer temporary companionship. But genuine emotional support is rare. True loyalty is rare. Consistent understanding is rare. Authentic care is rare. These qualities become even more valuable in a world where many relationships are built on convenience rather than commitment. That is why regret often appears. Not immediately, not dramatically, but gradually. It starts during difficult moments. Moments when someone needs understanding and cannot find it. Moments when someone needs support and realizes the person who always provided it is no longer there. Moments when someone finally understands what they lost. The regret becomes stronger because people begin comparing their new experiences to what they once had. They meet people who are quick to judge, people who are impatient, people who disappear when situations become difficult, people who only stay when it benefits them. And then memories begin returning. Memories of the empath who stayed, the empath who listened, the empath who forgave, the empath who cared. What once seemed ordinary now appears extraordinary. What once seemed replaceable now appears rare. And that shift in perception can be painful, because by the time many people understand the value of what they lost, the empath has already moved forward. This is another misunderstanding about empaths. Many assume they remain emotionally attached forever. Many assume they spend years waiting for people to change. Many assume they never truly let go. But once an empath reaches their breaking point and genuinely begins healing, a remarkable transformation takes place. The same emotional awareness that once kept them trapped starts setting them free. They begin seeing patterns more clearly. They begin recognizing behavior they previously excused. They begin understanding how much of themselves they sacrificed in order to maintain unhealthy relationships. This realization can be shocking, not because they suddenly hate the people involved, but because they finally see how much they tolerated. They see how often their needs were ignored. They see how often their kindness was taken for granted. They see how often they accepted less than they deserved. And once they see these things clearly, it becomes difficult to unsee them. That is when the empath enters one of the most important stages of their life, the stage of rebuilding. For years, their focus may have been directed outward, helping others, supporting others, saving others, understanding others. Now the focus begins turning inward. At first, this feels uncomfortable. Many empaths are not used to prioritizing themselves. They are used to being the giver. They are used to being the helper. They are used to being the protector. Choosing themselves can feel unfamiliar. Sometimes it even feels selfish. But slowly they begin learning a lesson that changes everything. Taking care of themselves is not selfish. Protecting their peace is not selfish. Creating boundaries is not selfish. Saying no is not selfish. These lessons seem simple, but for many empaths they are life-changing. Because boundaries are often the one thing they avoided for years. They feared disappointing people. They feared hurting feelings. They feared appearing cold. As a result, they allowed access to their energy without limits. Now they begin understanding that healthy relationships require healthy boundaries. Without boundaries, kindness becomes exhaustion. Without boundaries, generosity becomes exploitation. Without boundaries, empathy becomes self-neglect. As these realizations grow stronger, the empath starts changing in ways that surprise everyone around them. They become more selective about who receives their time, more selective about who receives their trust, more selective about who receives their emotional energy. This does not mean they become cruel. It does not mean they stop caring. It does not mean they lose their compassion. In many cases, they remain just as kind as before. The difference is that their kindness now includes themselves. That is the transformation many people never expect. The empath who once gave endlessly now understands limits. The empath who once tolerated everything now recognizes warning signs. The empath who once ignored red flags now pays attention to them. The empath who once stayed too long now knows when to walk away. And this new version is far more difficult to manipulate. In the past, guilt may have worked. Pressure may have worked. Emotional games may have worked. Promises may have worked. Now those tactics lose their power. The empath begins evaluating actions rather than words. They begin trusting patterns rather than promises. They begin noticing consistency rather than excuses. This shift creates a level of emotional strength that many people mistake for distance. But it is not distance. It is clarity. For the first time, they understand that not every problem is theirs to solve. Not every person is theirs to save. Not every relationship is theirs to carry. This understanding changes how they move through the world. They stop chasing approval. They stop proving their worth. They stop sacrificing their peace to keep others comfortable. And as this transformation continues, something unexpected happens. Their confidence grows. Not loud confidence. Not arrogant confidence. A quiet confidence. The confidence that comes from knowing their value. The confidence that comes from respecting themselves. The confidence that comes from realizing they can survive without the approval of people who never truly appreciated them. This is often the moment when former friends, partners, or acquaintances become confused. They expected the empath to remain the same. They expected endless access. They expected endless forgiveness. They expected endless patience. Instead, they encounter someone who still possesses compassion but now also possesses boundaries. Someone who still understands others but no longer abandons themselves. Someone who still cares deeply but refuses to be used. And that version of an empath is incredibly powerful because their kindness is no longer driven by fear. Their generosity is no longer driven by guilt. Their loyalty is no longer given automatically. Everything becomes intentional. Everything becomes healthier. Everything becomes stronger. The person who once carried everyone else's emotional burdens finally learns how to carry their own life with balance, wisdom, and self-respect. And as that transformation continues, the people who underestimated them often find themselves watching from a distance, trying to understand how the person they once took for granted became the strongest version of themselves. As we reach the end of this journey, one truth stands above all the others. An empath's greatest strength is not their ability to absorb endless pain. It is not their ability to forgive countless mistakes. And it is not their willingness to sacrifice themselves for everyone around them. Their greatest strength is the moment they finally realize their own worth. For a long time, many empaths give more than they receive. They listen when nobody else listens. They stay when others leave. They offer support without expecting anything in return. Because of this, people often become comfortable with their presence. They begin to see their kindness as normal. Their loyalty becomes expected. Their patience becomes assumed. But what is available every day is often appreciated the least. That is why losing an empath can become such a powerful lesson. Not because they seek revenge, not because they create suffering, but because their absence reveals what their presence was truly worth. The encouragement they gave, the understanding they offered, the peace they brought, the emotional safety they created. These things may seem small in the moment, but once they disappear, their value becomes impossible to ignore. If there is an empath in your life, appreciate them while they are still there. Respect their boundaries, value their efforts, listen to their feelings the same way they listen to yours. Because kindness should never be treated as weakness, and patience should never be mistaken for endless tolerance. Every empath has a limit, and once that limit is reached, the door that remained open for years can quietly close forever. The most surprising part is that when an empath finally walks away, they often do not leave with anger. They leave with clarity. They leave with lessons. They leave with a deeper understanding of themselves. And while others may still be trying to understand what happened, the empath has already begun a new chapter. So before you go, take a moment and ask yourself this question. Have you ever taken someone's kindness for granted simply because it was always there? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear your perspective. If you enjoyed this video and found it meaningful, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who needs to hear this message today. Your support helps us create more powerful content about psychology, human behavior, relationships, and personal growth. Thank you for watching, and remember this: the loudest goodbye is not always spoken. Sometimes it is felt in the silence left behind when a truly caring person decides they can no longer stay. We'll see you in the next video.